to welcome Markus Akerblom from the Swedish Ice Hockey Federation. And Markus and I actually have just gotten to know each other over the last week or 10 days through Zoom chats and sharing a little bit of our thoughts on player development and the environment, which is what our topic is going to be today. Markus was drafted in 1988 by the Winnipeg Jets. He was the first pick in the 7th round, and we talked a little bit. If you go back that far in the NHL, there were only 21 teams and 12 rounds. So if we were to look at that today, he would have been a first pick in the 4th round. So quite a player in his own right, and I'll let people go ahead and look up on elite prospects. But Markus played in 2 European Junior Championships, and in North America, we're familiar with that right now as the under 18 or the under 18 World Championship. Back then in 86 and 87, Canada and the US were not invited to play in that championship. And it was really the precursor to the World Championship as we know it now. He was a 2-time World Junior Championship player on Swedish's national team. And then he has a long list of jobs and acclaims that he did. He was the GM in Östersund, and he coached every level there from 8 and under to the pro team. He was the head coach in the Allsvenskan for Björklöven. He was the head coach in Leksand and Tingsgrid, also in the Allsvenska League, which is the 2nd league in Sweden. Last year, he worked for the Swedish Ice Hockey Federation as the U17 head coach, and this year he was tabbed to be an assistant coach for the men's national team. And unfortunately, really, we're all going to miss that, and I suppose especially you, Markus. But I don't want to go on much further. I'm excited about today's topic. I'm going to turn it over to Markus right now, and we're going to have a little presentation and a discussion about the importance of environment in player development and growth. So Markus, thanks for being on.
Thank you so much. Thank you especially for putting me up to a 4th rounder. I really appreciate that. But most of all, thanks guys for inviting me to this. It's a big honor for me to be a part of this, and I'm really looking forward to it. I really would like to start to say that the topic and the things we're going to talk about today is I'm only going to talk about from a Swedish point of view. I know that when we talk about environment, there's a lot of things that contributes to the environment, such things as social and culture backgrounds, how the society is looking, and a lot of stuff like that. So I can't really talk about anything than the Swedish point of view and the work that we try to do, creating the most and the best environment for our players. So I just would like you guys to keep that in mind. If you think that I'm talking nonsense every now and then, that I'm talking from a Swedish point of view. And if any one of you out there is picking up 1 or 2 things that you think is really good and that you can implement in your coaching and in your environment, that would make me very happy. But as I just said, I'm talking from a Swedish point of view, and I hope you guys are gonna enjoy this evening and our presentation. I'm just gonna start with showing a couple of slides. Just in order for you to understand what Swedish hockey is, I don't know how much knowledge you got about Swedish hockey. I think Bob would probably comment on the numbers and stuff, but we're like a really small country. I don't think we're bigger than a average size United States state. We got like 50,000 licensed players. And in that 50,000, there's also the old guys included. We got through almost 400 clubs. We've got 357 arenas and outdoor rinks. So this is what our number looks like. So as you can see, we're a pretty small country with not that many players. And that's also why we think that environment becomes so important. But I'm going to talk about that a little bit later. When we talk about numbers and talk about how small we are as a country, I would like to put up these numbers too. These are the numbers of players represented in the NHL this season, this past season. And as you can see, we had 113 Swedes playing in the best league in the world, which I think it's amazing that we have that many players playing in the best league in the world. And on top of that, we got our own professional league with 14 teams. And we got approximately 20, 30 players playing in the Russian professional league. And we also got 20 to 30 players playing in the Swiss professional leagues. So that means we almost got 200 players playing professional outside, playing professional total. So I think that's a big number. And also this is last summer's draft. We had 26 Swedish players drafted by an NHL team last summer. And the last 12 years, 306 Swedish players were drafted by the NHL teams. The reason I'm showing you these numbers is not that I want to pat ourselves on the chest and say that we are really good. I'm really proud of these numbers and the work we are doing to produce all these players. But the reason I'm showing you this is that I think that we don't have any other knowledge than anyone else. I don't think we practice any more than anyone else. I don't think we don't have any different drills on the ice. We don't use video more than anyone else. So what this comes down to is I think that Sweden right now has the best environment for our players. I'm not saying that we have the best environment, but for our players, for the Swedish players, I think we have a great environment right now to produce really good hockey players. That's why I'm showing you these numbers. This is no magic or anything. This is just hard work, and that we find a way to really develop good hockey players, even though the numbers from the start isn't that great or that many. You got a comment on the numbers there, Bob?
I do, Marcus, because I think it's important for all of us on the call to really look at the numbers that you talked about. You know, when we look at overall number of youth players, Sweden falls somewhere in between Michigan and Minnesota. So, you know, we're really talking not a whole country when we look at our numbers here in the US, but just one of our districts, you know, like Michigan or like Minnesota, when we're talking about the development of players. So I think that's important. And then you start looking at the number of associations in the US. There's just over 2,000. And then also, when you look at the number of 30,000 children in the age group 4 to 9, last year, USA Hockey, for the 5th year in a row, I believe, maybe it was 6, but 5th year in a row, I think, where we had over 100,000 players under 8 years old. So, and again, I think, you know, not to make the comparison in numbers, but really, I wanted to say that, and I'm glad you gave me this opportunity to kind of set the table for what you're going to talk about next. Because when you're talking about the really limited number of hockey players that you have, that has kind of pushed Sweden in the direction of making sure the environment is so so good, has it not?
I think most definitely. I don't think that we really have a choice. Um, I can jump ahead a bit here. These are pretty much the same numbers, but in a different way. And if you see, our total has really decreased the last 20 years from 62,000 to 49. And the age group between 10 and 15, it decreased from 40 to 29. I think we managed to keep up the 16s to up to just a small decrease, but the big numbers here are the club, the associations that went down from 750 to almost 400, almost half of it. So changing the environment is not only because we want to produce and develop more and better hockey players, it's also a way for us to stay alive. Because if we can't have an environment where kids want to come and play, we're soon going to die as a hockey nation. And that's probably the biggest reason why we're looking at the environment so much and think that it's so important, because that's the whole thing that's going to make sure that we can produce and especially that we can play hockey in the future. So I think that's really the main reason to it. I don't know who wrote this quote, but I think it's really good. And I think it sort of puts it all in a good picture. That I think that we in the past always sort of chased the talent individuals. But now I think we're trying to move to see the talent in the environment as well. And I think that's really important.
Marcus, if I may, just for a second,
Yeah, sure.
we got a question that came in, and before you go on about the environment, it's really a numbers-based question. One of our listeners, our viewers, noticed the increase in the number of girls that are playing.
Sorry.
And they wanted to know, is there anything specific that you can point to that led to this increase in girl and women hockey players?
No, I cannot. But as you see, the numbers are still very, very low. And I don't know if you know, but our women hockey right now is struggling a bit. Partly it has to do with the number of players, but most of all, I think it has to do with that we haven't really found the good environments for girl and women's hockey in Sweden yet. And I think we're working on it, but we're not doing a good enough job on creating this environment for girls and women in hockey in Sweden right now. But I think somewhere in the early 2000s there, I think we had a drive starting up a new sort of recruitment system, both for boys and girls. But I think where we had the most effect were at the girls. And I think also that our national team had some success those years. We had an Olympic medal, and we did well in the World Championships, and they were shown on TV and stuff like that, which I think also contribute to the increase. But as you see, the numbers are way too low. Still, if we're going to be competitive, that number has to go up. And in order to get the numbers up, we have to create an environment that is more specific for girls and women.
Thank you.
There you go. So this is sort of the model that we're using right now. As we talked about, I'm going to talk about later too, the player-centered approach. And I think this is a good picture showing what we're trying to do. And the most important thing here is that we always try to place the player in the center. No matter what, but in our environment, the players need to be in the center. not the coaches, not the parents, not the club, not anything but the player. And this is really so important, because this is the fundamental thing about creating a good environment, that always keeping the player, the person, or the child in the center. And I think we're going to talk a lot about that during this presentation, but in different ways. But this is the way we try to see it. But also, the player needs to have the hockey skills, the psychological skills, and the physical skills, and hockey sense and stuff like that. But also, it needs to be supported by the clubs, by the parents, and by the coaches. And if the players also have good role models, that's really good. And I think that also we need to create, you probably thought about this too, but you know, kids growing up today is not like when we grow up. This generation growing up is totally different from when we grew up. And I think that we need to find an environment that is based on what they are wanting. We can't base the environment of what we did 20 years ago, or what our coaches did to us 20, 30 years ago. Because the kids growing up now these days, I think they are self-centered. I'm not going to say if that's good or bad. They just are more self-centered nowadays growing up. I think they have much more knowledge these days than we had when we grew up. They have the social media, they have contacts all over the world. We have a different school system now than we did 20 years ago. There's so many things that create this new generation of kids coming in wanting to play hockey. And I think kids coming in to play hockey, they expect certain things. They expect a certain environment. And I think it's up to us to find that environment that they are looking for. Because if we can't produce that, they're not going to stay in the hockey, at least not in Sweden. They're going to move on to soccer or floor bandy or esports and stuff like that, because it's so much easier to participate in that. Hockey is the hardest sport in the world, and it's expensive, and the big equipment, and it takes a lot of time, and you need parents to be sort of included in it. It's a tough sport. So in order for us to get the players to stay, we can't be satisfied with being as good as everyone else. We need to be better, and we need to be much better. And then I'm talking about the environment and the center of the player. The player needs to be center of attention.
Markus, if I can interrupt you just for a second
Sure.
here, and I throw you a little bit of a curveball maybe, but it hits me. You have club, parents, role models, and coaches on the outside of the ice surface,
Yeah.
which makes sense. We talk about, or you're talking about player-centered.
Yeah.
And you have referees inside the rink. Now, obviously, one could look at that as saying, well, yeah, that's where the referees belong. They are inside the rink. But is there more to that? Because, as you know, I had a wonderful experience this year watching a lot of hockey in Sweden, a lot of J20 and J18 hockey, some J16 and some pro. And I was very, very impressed by the role of the referee in terms of how they fit in to the game environment. So I guess my question is that just because that's where the referees are physically, or is that really looked at that the referees are important to the player-centered environment?
I think it's the second thing. I think they need to be in there. And I think also that I think you probably have the same problem as we do, the lack of referees. And I think that we need to address to the players that the referees are a part of the game. They should be respected. But also the other point, and we're going to talk about that later too, that not every player becomes hockey pros. I don't know the percentage, but the percentage is very small. The rest of the players go through the system and they probably end up quitting playing when they're like 15, 16 or 20, or at the best case, they play semi-pro a couple of years and they quit when they're 25. Wouldn't it be great if we could have these guys become referees instead of just quitting? So if we can have the referees inside this box from the start, maybe that becomes an option for some of the players when they feel that, okay, I love hockey, but I'm not going to become a hockey pro, but maybe I can become a referee. So that's also part of the environment, to actually educate players to become other things in this important environment. We need future coaches too. We need future equipment managers. We need future parents to bring in their own kids to the game. And that is also included in this thinking of environment that sort of brings everyone along. We can't just focus on the 2-3 guys that are going to become NHL pros or pros in the Swedish league. We need to take care of them all, because in our case, we're going to die if we don't have everyone on board. And that's the numbers game.
Very good. Thank you.
We've seen that already. Oh, we jumped to there. This is sort of a couple of slides just showing once again the importance of the coach's role to sort of make the motivation for players and make them, I don't know the words here. We need them to be in the game for their whole life. Just what I was talking about before, because the self-centered approach is us trying to meet the players at their level. We're not going to force players to come up to our level or the next door neighbor guy's level. We need to meet the players at their level and their expectations when they come to the rink. And in order to do that, we need to get to know our players. Because if we don't know our players, we don't know how to handle them. So we need to take interest in every individual coming to the rink. And this is not an age thing. It doesn't matter if you're a junior player or if you're a U8 player. We need to take an interest in every individual. Building relationships is so important. And as it says on the screen, that can actually be a relationship that lasts a long, long time. I'm so proud because still at this day, I meet young adults nowadays that I coached when they were like 8, 9, 10 years old, and they actually are happy to meet me. That's one of the proudest moments you got as a coach, when you meet old players and they actually like meeting you. That's really important to me, instead of having they change the side of the road when they meet you. So self-centered approach and generally take interest in every individual is really super important. As we said before, not everyone becomes elite players, but I think it's the thing that get everyone a lifelong interest in the game. We need people coming back to the sport, even if we don't become hockey pros or if we don't still play when we're 27. Because we need the next generation coaches and equipment managers and referees and all this stuff. And it doesn't really matter. I think we have to be in there in order to meet the kids. in regardless of differences. We're going to talk about that, 2 skills at the moment: ambition, age, gender, class, ethnicity, sexual orientation, and more. We need to be there for everyone. And if we can't be that, we probably should do something else. If we can't be there for every individual that comes to the rink, we should probably look ourselves in the mirror and ask ourselves the question, is this really something that I should be doing? Because it's all about setting the right environment for the future hockey players and for the future hockey coaches. I think that most coaches are aware of this, that development is not linear. But this is also a part of the environment that I think we need to address and be aware of all the time. I think it's extremely important that we give every player the equal opportunities to develop. But as you know, you can have 1 year a great player that is moving smooth and really skilled players, and after a summer break he comes in and he's grown like a couple of inches and he's 10 kilo heavier, and all of a sudden he can't skate and he can't move and he can't pass the puck. Are we supposed to make a judgment on that guy right then? No, I don't think so, because we have to know that things happen to kids while they grow up. And that's also being the player-centered approach, to know what's going on with the kids. It's so easy to say that he can't skate or he can't move, but yeah, that's because he grown like 10 inches this summer. So we need to know this in order to create a good environment. I think this is a big thing, I think, in every country. I think we would like as coaches to think that we can really select who's the best player probably really early, but I'm afraid to say that we can't. I think it's really easy to point at number 1, 2, and 3 in every team and say these are the guys that are going to become the best. Well, they are probably going to be good players, number 1, 2, and 3. And we can say that player number 17, 18, 19, he's probably not going to be, or she is probably not going to be a hockey player. But who's looking at number 4, 5, and 6? How can we make a decision if 4, 5, and 6 are they going to become hockey players or not? When are they born early, or are they born late at the year? Have they skated a lot before joining the club or the team?
Marcus, when you talk about waiting as long as possible, you know, I mean, my experience there and what I've seen is we're talking really about not separating players into what, you know, over here we might sometimes refer to as elite, although I think there's some real negative connotations about how we use that word and when we use it. But we're talking about 14 or 15 years old before you're really looking at separating players into of a high performance path. Is that right?
Yes, if you look at our system, we have sort of a natural break when we change the school system from what we call the ground school to the high school, which is at 15, 16. And at that point, every player choose to go, if they want to, they can choose to go to a hockey academy. And that choice and that selection is done 15, 16 years old. And of course, there's selections happening earlier, but not by the system. And I think that most of the clubs in Sweden is doing a very good job not to separate or change the environment for players until they're 15, 16.
You know, if I may, I just interject because I think it's really important that when we listen to you talk, there is no difference in the whole idea of every player being important and a player-centered environment for the youngest players and the players who then are selected. And I think that's really important. I was thoroughly impressed with the fact that at the youngest ages, the environment is such where you want every kid to love hockey and get better. But I was also very impressed after some of that selection does take place at 15 and 16, that while the environment may be more focused on a high performance track, or the direction may be more focused on a high performance track, your environment from the coaches was the same. I don't want to say I was shocked, but I was just, it was so nice to see that all those players on the team were well taken care of, well thought of, and cared about by the coaches, the managers, everybody. And there didn't seem to be a class system even once they got to that level.
I'm glad to hear what you're saying. Of course, there's not like that in every club, in every team, and all over Sweden. We got problems with that too, but I think we come a long way. And once again, I think this is, if you go back 20 years, it was not like this. But once we could see the numbers of playing dropping, we sat down and really started to discuss, is this the way we should do stuff? Is this really how we should educate players? Because if we continue to do it in this way, we're not going to have any players left. So I think that is a journey that we started 10, 15 years ago, and I think we've come a long way. But I wouldn't say that we're quite there yet. I think we still got a lot of work to do in order to create this environment that we're talking about right now. It's getting better, but I still think we can do a whole lot better too. Appropriate settings. This is a big debate over here, especially when you're talking cross ice and small ice hockey. I'm sorry, this game we're playing is the other North American team from up north. I'm not going to say the name of it, but as you can see, all 10 players are sort of in one corner playing. So there is no doubt, and this is the way it looks every time we play. When we play at national team level, this is the way it looks. If we play in our own end, if we play in the offensive zone, or if we play in the neutral zone, this is pretty much how it looks. And I think this is really important, because if we want to develop players that can play at this level, we need to introduce them to the game as soon as possible. And the only way to do that for really young players is to do it cross ice and small ice. So if we get appropriate settings in our environment, that will make a huge difference when we talk about skills and the development of hockey players.
What does the federation, what are your recommendations? We had a question. They want to know, what are the age groups at the youngest ages? And of course, you guys put the U before the number, we put it after, which makes a big difference. But if maybe you could give us the youngest age groups and tell us a little bit about where or what setting each age group is playing at.
Okay. I think that I'm not gonna, to be honest, I'm not 100% sure that this is accurate all over Sweden. I think it differs a little bit within different districts. But normally we have the thing we call for skating school, or Tre Kronor hockey school, that reaches from as young as 4 or 5 year olds up until 7, I think. And the first time we make a team is at U8, when they're 8 years old. And they are only allowed to play cross ice. They don't play anything else than cross ice. Then I'm not really sure about 9, 10, and 11. I think that's also cross ice all the time, but I'm not sure. I think 9 and 10 are playing cross ice for sure. But I know that some districts even have cross ice up until 14 this past season. But I know for sure that the most of the district played cross ice up until U12 before Christmas. Then they moved on to big ice after Christmas. And this is a huge debate because most of the coaches of the younger team and the younger players, they want to play full ice still. I think this is also something that it becomes better all the time, but we still have a lot of work to do. And once again, this is a culture thing, I think, because the coaches coming in is parents, which it's a strength that I think we have in our society, that dads and moms are coming in, helping out, coaching the young players. But it's also they don't have the full knowledge yet. So the only thing they can do when they come in and start coaching is to do what they know. And the things they know is the things they did 20 years ago. And 20 years ago, no one played cross ice. So in order to change this, I think we need to spread the word. And I think we need to make the educations even better, because I generally think that small kids up until 10, 11 should do much more small ice area hockey and cross ice hockey, because this, as you can see in the picture, this is the way it looks. And it's the same when you watch NHL games or every high level game. This is the way it looks. It's 10 guys in 25% of the surface, and they're moving fast, and they're big, and they're strong, and you need to handle if you want to play at this level. So development, appropriate setting is really super important.
Thank you.
Physical literacy. I'm not going to talk really much about that because it's not my best knowledge. I saw the thing you had the other day from Dina Krilliars. So if you guys are interested in physical literacy, I recommend you to go into the USA webinar and find that. That was really good. But this is pretty much also the same. And I think even here, I think we've come a long way, because a couple of years ago, not a couple, but maybe 10 years ago, there was a big fight always between soccer and hockey, because at the spring and the fall, it collided. And soccer is now more or less a 12-month game, and the same with hockey. We expect players to play 12-month a year. But I think now that soccer and hockey is talking to each other, and that we decide that we should let players stay within their sport before they change. And as long as possible, try to have them to play both sports. And if they can do even more sports, it's even better. The more sports they can do, the better it is. And I think we as adults and coaches, we are not the one who's going to decide if they're going to quit or if they're going to continue. That's the kid himself that needs to make that decision. And that decision will grow, and he will take the right decision, or she will take the right decision when the time is right. Then what we should do is we should be there and address what they need to do. If anyone wants to become a hockey pro or go to the NHL, well, maybe you can't play both basketball, soccer, and hockey when you're 19 years old. Then you probably have to specialize earlier. But we need to allow kids to do more sports in order to get a wider range of motions. That's really important too. Anything you want to add, Bob?
Not here, Marcus. I've gotten a number of questions, so I'm kind of holding off here because it's 10 after 4. I know you have one more slide I want you to be able to address. And then we have a number of really interesting questions on some of the stuff you've talked about. So if you don't, I thought I'd just wait here. One more slide if that's.
Can I finish the slides? I got four more slides and I got to do them fast. All right. Good. I think this is something that we should keep in mind all the time. And this is, we can use it in ice hockey, and I think we should, but we can use it pretty much in any environment we like. And especially nowadays with this coronavirus and where we are right now, I think this is something that needs to be addressed. This is just basic human needs, something we need in every environment that we are involved in. I think we are always searching to find our environment safe and secure. And with that, I mean,
Okay.
Yeah.
No, so I am going to interrupt you, which is right, because one of the questions we have, it's a great question. It was particularly about the coronavirus.
Okay.
And since you brought it up, we might as well take care of it right now, which is Swedish hockey doing anything specific, and or what are you doing in the federation and with Swedish hockey now because of the coronavirus to keep in contact with your players, the parents, your constituents? How are you guys handling this on all fronts?
To be honest, right now, I don't think we're doing much because this was just happening while our season was ending. So most of the youth players have ended their season already. We had to stop in the Swedish Pro League, had to stop just going into the playoffs. And of course, we were ready to go and do the World Championships, which was canceled. So I think that what we're doing right now is trying to wait this out and see what happens and see how we can move forward from this point. What we're doing in the Swedish Hockey Association is that we're looking through our education programs, and we're trying to update all these things that we normally don't have time to do. So I think it's stuff like that, but I wouldn't say that we do anything specific right now.
At the end of this slide in yellow, you have there, mistakes are allowed.
Yeah.
I'm sorry I cut you off talking about the coronavirus before, but I do not want you to leave this slide, Marcus, without addressing that, because I think as you and I have spoken, that is so important to the environment that you're trying to set.
Yeah. And once again, this is when we use this in hockey, this is not an age thing. It doesn't matter if it's pros or if it's U8 or whatever it is. We need to find a safe and secure environment where mistakes are allowed. I think you all know the feeling when you go to an environment where you don't feel safe and secure. I think this is the fundamental thing of all development. If you are in an environment where you feel safe and secure, you have given yourself the opportunity to develop. But if it's not, you're not going to develop. That's my, I'm not debating that at all. And that means if you're going to a practice and you are scared of being yelled at every time, that's not a safe and secure environment. That kid is going to drop off. I'm sure about it.
And I think that's an important delineation. That's an important difference in sometimes how we over here talk about safe and secure. So just you saying that is so important, Marcus, because it's really that environment in which you practice that allows you to explore your capabilities without being, as you said, yelled at or put into a box. So yeah, I appreciate you very much hitting that. It's a very different concept for him.
And every time we talk about this, I think we get sometimes misunderstood that we expect the environment to be soft and just gentle and kind all the time. But of course, we need to have expectations of the players. But as we all know, they're going to make mistakes. It's how we address the mistakes and how we're handling that is the interesting part. But we still have to have expectations of our player. And especially they growing up when they're turning 15, 16, the expectations are growing bigger. But still, we need to allow them to make mistakes in order to make them feel safe and secure in our environment. This is the second thing. If we got a secure and safe environment, the next thing that comes along is the social needs. When I go to my team or to my practice, I need the feeling of belonging to that team, to that group. And I think it's the same thing if you go to your work or whatever. You want to come into that environment feeling that you belong there, that you are accepted by the rest of the group, that you are making friends and you are accepted, and that you belong. Because the opposite is not developing you as a person or a hockey player. And this is also fundamental needs from back in the days when we were hunting and living in caves. If you weren't in a social group, if you didn't have the feeling of belonging, you were probably going to die because no one would give you any food and you wouldn't have any shelter. So this is basic human needs to be socially involved. And this is what I mean about the corona. The environment right now in our society is not safe, it is not secure. And the social needs are really tough because a lot of people are isolated. They don't feel that they belong to anyone, to anywhere. They don't feel like they have a group that they belong to. So this is also something I think that we should keep in mind when we set the environment, that these are the needs that every human being needs. And the next is the esteem needs. It's not enough with the safe environment and the social needs. When I am in a group, I also, and I feel that I belong in that group, I also want a task. I also want to be important. And that is for us as coaches to make sure that our player feels like they are important and that they have a specific role in our team, and make them feel as competent and that they are recognized for the hard work to put in. So safe environment, the social needs, and then give them a task. This is crucial to people everywhere. And right now, again, Corona times, the environment isn't safe, there's no social needs, and you don't have any task because you're locked inside. This is why people are starting to feel pretty upset about the situation we're in right now. And the last thing, if we get the secure and safe environment, you got the social needs, and you feel that you belong in the group, you got a task, you got a role, you know what you're going to do. Then you also, on top of that, need to feel that you are developing, getting better, you get more knowledge, and become better as a hockey player or what other group you're in. Because if that doesn't happen, you're also going to drop off. because you need to improve in the environment you're in. Otherwise, there is no point in being in that environment or that group or having those social needs. So this is things that I personally think is really important to sort of have in the back of your mind at all times when you work with other human beings, because this is needs that we have in the whole society today.
Marcus, this has been fantastic, and I have actually three or four questions that I'd like to get to, because they're just
Sure.
so good. And the first one is going back a few slides to the rink diagram and the four corners of the rink. Yeah, why don't we pull it up for everybody? Yeah, the question was a very specific on-ice development question in this case, of the hockey skills, physical skills, hockey sense, psychosocial skills that are happening on the rink. Is there one that is more focused than the other? And if so, does it change by age, or is it a balance between all of those things to develop the player, in your opinion?
In my opinion, it should be balanced, but I don't think it is. I think the one to the bottom right, the psychosocial, I don't think we address that enough. I think that circle should probably be much smaller than the others. I think we don't focus enough on the hockey sense, because it takes a lot of knowledge to see the hockey sense. I think we focus a little bit too much when we decide who's talented or not by looking at the skills. If we see a guy that can skate, pass, or shoot really well, we address him as talented. So I wish that all four were the same size, but I don't think they are. And I hope that we probably could move it around a bit, but I think we're still focusing a little bit too much on the hockey skills, because that's the easy thing to focus on as well.
Great. Question about teams till age 14. We are asked a question, are your teams tiered within your associations, or do they play, everybody plays no matter your skill level? How are they broken up? Are they broken up? Do you feel it's important one way or the other? And how would you address people who have those questions about players of different abilities playing with each other?
Okay, good question. Thank you. We have a system. You see that to the left, we call it the clubs. We got a system where in one club, it's probably, I would say there's 8 to 12 teams in a club. It depends on the size of the club. But all these 8 to 12 teams working really tight together. And that it's not the coaches that makes the decision, it's the club. So if the coach asks the club if he got a 10-year-old that is really talented, he's not getting the what do you call it, the resistance he needs to develop, we can move him up to play with the 10-year-olds. And the same thing going the other way. And we can mix practices, and we can move them back and forth in different games, different opponents. If we play a really good team, maybe the 9-year-old shouldn't be in there. But if we play a decent, a good team, and it's going to be a good game, maybe we can put up the 9-year-old so he can go back and forth a little bit. But the important thing is that he knows where his team is and what his environment is.
See, it's as you and I have talked just a little bit, and that's such a foreign concept for us in a situation or an environment where we have very set rosters and a real adherence to teams, specific teams that you're a part of. So that question's a fascinating one. Your answer was great, because over here, that focus is driven by rostering needs and things like that, but also I think our environment and our I'm getting questions of winning, just that a team has to be together. I have parents, when you look at this whole approach of, the clubs having development, of the selection of players not happening to 15 or 16, the idea that players are going to develop at different rates and it's not linear. How have your parents bought into this? Do you get buy-in from the parents throughout Sweden? I know it's obviously every case is different, but in general, how do you guys feel about your parents and the direction?
As you said, it's a huge variety. Of course it is. But I think also that we got a pretty good program that we call Parents Education, where we try to educate the parents of what to expect. So I think most of the parents have a really good respect and they trust the club to do the work that they're set to do. So of course there's parents that questions the club and how they select players and not moving players up or down, but the club is in control. The club is the one who's deciding, not the parents. Most of the cases I should address.
So it's interesting. I'm getting a lot of questions, a follow-up on the 14U question about making AAA teams. I'm getting questions about dealing with young players who are at the best. And if I may, Marcus, instead of putting it out to you, I'm just gonna, address everybody who's listening in the fact that I think we all over here in North America have to understand that this whole development system that Marcus is talking about is very different. So they're not worried about elite teams at 14 and under, because as Marcus said, those are in the club system and they're pushing back the selection of those players to 15 and 16. So that's really not a concern. And we have another question about dealing with young players who are the best player in their age group, and have they outgrown the environment? And again, I think, I want everybody to feel like they've had their question answered, but I think if we look at your answer about how you're able to move players up and down through different age groups and teams, it really makes some of those other points or other questions a little moot in when you're looking across the different countries. Real quick, Marcus, where are you coaching in now? What area of Sweden? What's the biggest city close by? Someone has asked your region.
I'm up north in a region where there isn't that much hockey, to be honest. When I'm coaching the national team, we most of the time meet in Stockholm. But I would say that right now it's the southern part of Sweden that is with Frölunda and a couple of other teams that is really doing a great job in educating players and setting the role model. This is not just the association setting the rules. We do this in cooperation with all the elite clubs in Sweden. So they give us inputs and we give them inputs, and together we put together a pretty good program, I think, for developing hockey players.
Two real quick questions, and I know if I go over the 1 hour time, my colleagues will make fun of me, and I'm going to blame you, Marcus. So, but real quickly, someone asked, who oversees the development of your older, better players in the country? Does that fall under the federation? Is there a single person? Is there a group? How would you characterize who's overseeing those best players' development?
The clubs. And every club have what we probably would call the GM. and that's the GM. He's responsible for all the players in each club. That might be up to 400 or 500 players, but sometimes we also divide it so we got like 4 GMs in one club, and they are overseeing the development of players and in contact with the association, of course, because we need them for the national teams too.
Is there a referee program? You talked earlier about ex-players and going into the possibility of officiating. Do you have a program for players who feel they've tapped out or they've reached their limit, for them to move seamlessly from playing into officiating?
I really wish I could answer that question, but to be honest, I don't know. I don't think so, but I don't know. I wish we could have, and probably we do, but I don't know. Sorry.
Right. Well, I see Dave is chomping at the bit here. He's had enough of us. But Markus, I have, my phone has absolutely blown up with people who have just so complimentary to what you've brought to our webinar series and the information and your expertise. Just fantastic. So
thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
On behalf of USA and all of us, thank you so much for taking your time. Dave?
You're welcome.
Hey, thank you, Markus. Thanks, Bob. That was a great presentation. I know that definitely there's a lot of good questions. If anybody else has any more questions, you could definitely email me at dave.caruso@usahockey.org, and we'll try to get those answered for you. But again, great job. We have a lot of great guests scheduled for the rest of the week. We got Mike Buckley, who's the Pittsburgh Penguins goalie coach. He's going to talk about technique or instincts. And, you know, you get a lot with the goalies about, you know, they got to be perfect technique, but he's going to bring a good perspective of kind of combining both. And then on Friday, we have John Hines, NHL coach for the Nashville Predators. He's going to be chatting again with Bob. So you're going to get to see Bob's nice way of helping through all this. So Bob really does a great job at facilitating these. So we're really excited for the rest of the week. We are really thankful for Markus to come on, and kind of our friendships with the Swedish Ice Hockey Federation, and, you know, learning from each other. So thanks again. Thanks everybody who watched, and we will see you tomorrow at 3:30. Have a good one.
Thank you.